The battle between Payton Thorne and Robby Ashford will be the biggest position battle of Auburn's fall camp.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. The everydayers know that Darrell Dapprich is the man, the myth, the legend, and he's never wrong. No one has ever heard Darrell Dapprich be wrong once. And Darrell, today we're discussing the top 5 position battles that Auburn will have to deal with this fall camp. And I guess over the course of summer workouts too, as much as you can compete in these position battles. But first things first, you got to look at the quarterback situation. The biggest battle is for a quarterback. Payton Thorne, Robby Ashford, the showdown between those two is the most important position battle this fall.
It is. And honestly, Zach, even if it wasn't, I don't think it's 50-50 going into the battle. I mean, even if, let's just say, for the sake of argument, it was absolutely a dead heat, and maybe it is. I just suspect that it's maybe not, but I could be wrong.
But
let's just say it is even if it was a battle that was one-sided going in, by the nature of it being a player that is coming in from another school, from another conference, and it being the quarterback position, which is the most crucial, even if it wasn't, pins and needles, too close to call type battle, it is the most important because it is the quarterback position. And you can't win without having an elite quarterback or a good quarterback, in my opinion. And this is somebody that Hugh Freeze targeted. So just by that, I don't want to say by default, but even if it wasn't a dead heat, and some suspect it is going into camp, it has to be the most important and the biggest position battle because of the position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not a dead heat. If you had to put a percentage on it, what would it be? I would say 80-20 in favor of Payton Thorne.
Yeah, I was going to say 75-25, which is pretty interesting that we were that close without even talking about this. But I'd say 75-20, only because I feel like this is a guy that Hugh Freeze, I am not trying to besmudge or belittle or downplay Robby Ashford, his accomplishments, his talents, his gifts. But I think when Hugh Freeze targets somebody, and all indications are he passed on some quarterbacks and targeted Payton Thorne, handpicked him. When you do that, you kind of sway the percentages of what the battle is and what the chances are going to win that job. It's not like he inherited Payton Thorne. He went out and got Payton Thorne. Not as a freshman, but as an established 2-year starter from the Big Ten. When you handpick somebody, it's just like the basketball team. When Bruce Pearl goes and gets a 2-guard, you think there's a competition for the 2-guard between Denver Jones and Katie Johnson? I don't think so. I think he's handpicked. And, he is identified, this is who I want, and that's what I think with Payton Thorne.
Yeah. How do you anticipate this battle going down? Because I do think the timeline is going to be interesting just because Payton didn't go through spring, and you need as many reps with the ones as possible. Is this going to be a situation where you see it kind of come together quicker than we have in previous quarterback battles at Auburn, just because the reps are more scarce than they used to be?
Oh, that's a great point. I do think that. I think because the urgency is such that you want to get Payton Thorne as many first-team reps and don't want to fool around and have him split snaps. Number 2, all indications are he's a very smart, high-intelligent, high-IQ quarterback. The son of a coach. And so I think he's going to pick up quickly to what Hugh Freezes want to do. And then third, he has been here, thankfully, for a month and a half now. We've heard reports he's been throwing on the side with receivers running routes. He's establishing chemistry, building rapport. I think that'll shorten the timeline. I really do.
I think it needs to, regardless of if it's Payton or Robby. I think the earlier you decide that, the better. The better. All right, Auburn's next most important position battle is the task of finishing the offensive line. And so that is looking at the guards. We feel good about the tackles with transfers Dylan Wade and Gunnar Britton. We feel good about the center with Avery Jones coming in. It's the guard spots. And it's interesting because there's several guys that could play at these guard spots. This isn't just a Tate Johnson versus Connor Lew or a Jaden Muskrat versus a Jeremiah Wright. I think all four of those guys could play either guard spot, which does make this interesting.
Yeah, I've got Jeremiah Wright penciled in starting. I think the battle is for one guard spot between four guys: Cam Stutz, Tate Johnson, Connor Lew, and Muskrat Love. And if any, well, that's a song that really predates
Jeremiah on the left guard.
I do.
Okay, so this is all for the right guard.
It's all for the right side. And now the great thing about that scenario is you can take whoever doesn't win the right side, and you'll have a 1 and a 2, and then whoever's 3 in that scenario, and move them over to the left side to be Jeremiah's backup. That's a interchangeable. So to say we have 4 guards or 5 guards for 2 spots is a luxury Auburn hasn't had in a very long time.
Good point.
So that's pretty sweet, and that's because people get injured and that kind of thing. So I like that. But yeah, I think there's one guard spot up for grabs.
Yeah. And the intriguing part of that is one of those 4 guards that we just mentioned, Connor Lew's really a center. He's just so good that I think they want to put him on the field.
Yeah.
And then, Muskrat was a tackle, at Tulsa. So I think they're also going to kind of be able to play other positions too. God forbid something happened to Avery or one of the tackles. I mean, once again, like the depth that has happened and like what they've done with that position group is pretty crazy. It's pretty.
I left out Miller too, the JUCO transfer that I think somehow can plug and play in a backup tackler, backup guard spot. So you got some interchangeable spots along the offensive line that really makes for a little bit more depth for the first time in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they totally just flipped that position group. Now, unfortunately, they're going to have to do it again next year, but still, they're taking a step in the right direction. So, all right, our most important position battle is quarterback. That's not shocking. Second most important position battle is offensive guard. I'm putting both guards. You're saying right guard specifically. So I think some of that is we're splitting hairs there. But now we've got to ask, who is going to be the center of Auburn's defense? And we will discuss that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now, if you're new to FanDuel, you can take your first swing betting at MLB or anything else happening at FanDuel, and you can get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets. So up to $200. That's right, $20 down, and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, regardless of if you win or lose. It's all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. So sign up today, FanDuel.com/locked-on. That is $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network. Darrell Dapprich, our guest on today's Locked On Auburn. We both have as our third most important position battle, linebacker. Who will be the man commanding the center of the Ron Roberts defense, Darrell?
It's so cool to sit there and think about, I have 6 names that are competing for that spot, right? I mean, I have Asante, who seems to be a forgotten man. Eugene
Strong
Asante.
Second half of spring. Yep.
Austin Keys, Cam Riley, Robert Woodyard Jr., Larry Nixon III, and Wesley Steiner. Obviously, you'll put a couple of them on the field at the same time, but those are the 6 that I feel like have emerged. I think Nixon wins that job. I really, really like him. And I've had an opportunity since you and Charlie Five have done some podcasts where he has really talked up Larry Nixon to go back and just, look at film. That's what's so wonderful about having portal guys, because you can go back and look at game film from live games from last year. And, man, I like him. I like him a lot. He's a ball hawk. He's a very good tackler. He closes. So I think he is going to be the man in the middle. And I think Keys is going to play a significant role, which would be kind of strange because Steiner and Riley were your dudes last year that played a lot. I'm hoping as just kind of rooting for, which I shouldn't do. I should stay neutral in this scenario, but I really want to see Eugene Asante succeed and do well, because of what he went through last year off the field and coming from North Carolina. I want to see this guy get some significant snaps and make a contribution. So I'm holding out hope that he can.
Me too. And we say 6 linebackers, and I don't know how many of those are legitimate, but like when you list them all, you can make the argument for all of them in some form or another. I think Steiner gets washed out. If I had to guess, of the 6, I think Steiner is probably the least likely to win substantial playing time. Seemed like they liked him early in spring and gave him chances, but I don't see that. Did you say Demario Tolan?
I did not. That's funny.
Which is interesting, right? I mean, I agree with you.
That's a wild card there. Yeah, that makes 7. I did not mention him, and I could be falling into that trap because we haven't heard much coming from camp, coaches, notes, that kind of thing, mentioning his name. That could be by design. I look for things like that with clues, but he could be. I mean, I could be totally underselling him, and he could be the 7th guy in the mix there.
His teammates don't really mention him either. I mean, I've asked several defenders at all 3 levels about like how the linebacker battle's looking, and nobody ever talks about Demario. So I don't think it's just an us thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's why he kind of became forgotten, like an afterthought to me. And I hope that's not the case. I mean, 7 linebackers in this defense, in Ron Roberts' defense, you could get 5 or 6 playing significant snaps, especially early in the season with the heat and how it is down here. You could see a lot of reps.
We talked about this on Friday's show with Justin Ferguson. He said a similar thing. He thinks there's going to be 4 or 5 guys that play substantial snaps at linebacker. I'm just not buying that. That's a lot. I think that's a lot.
There's not that much separation is why I think there's not standouts. There's not 3 stud ponies, and then you got 3 backups. They're all so close that why not? If there's not much of a drop-off or that much of a succession, then just go ahead and play 5 or 6, get experience, and keep people fresh. Remember last year, people were absolutely trucking our linebackers because they were so tired, and Harsin had them running gassers on Fridays. So, I mean, that whole thing, they were wore out. They were getting trucked and run over. Keep fresh legs and bodies, and you might see a whole different type. People haven't separated themselves. If they do, halfway through the year, you got 2 or 3 guys that are really emerging, then don't do it. But until then, why not?
I think Austin Keys started to separate himself towards the end of spring. I think it's him and Larry Nixon. I think those are the first. Yeah. I think those are the first 2 guys that technically start, but the battle itself is for the market share of the snaps. And yeah, it could be 6 or 7, but yeah, that's super interesting to me. And it's going to be a thing where we probably see a lot of them against UMass, but how many do we see against Texas A&M a few weeks into the season? I think that's going to be telling.
Yeah, but that's the design is against the first 3 games, maybe see who kind of emerges or separates himself. And but what if nobody doesn't? What if everybody that plays significant snaps, you run 5 out there playing equal snaps, and nobody really differentiates themselves? Then what do? You really can't go with 2 or 3. I suspect Nixon and Keys will, especially Nixon. I think when you look at the stat sheet at the end of the Cal game, you're going to see Nixon have a ton of tackles, and he will be your dude going forward that you're really, really going to lean on. And then Keys and maybe Woodyard, some of those guys filling in from behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. If I had to go with my depth chart right now, just from 1 to 6 of those guys, we'll say 7. We'll put Tolan in here as well.
Okay.
I think I'm going Keys, Nixon, Riley, Asante, Woodyard, Steiner, then Tolan.
Okay. I would go with that, except I'd flip-flop Nixon and Keys. I'm that high on. Yeah, I have him 1. I think maybe Woodyard slots up over Riley. Maybe they're interchangeable, but I do have Steiner and Tolan as the last 2 as well. And maybe Asante. Listen, if Eugene Asante could be 3rd, like you listed him, that's significant for him because then he'll get some snaps, and that'll be good.
Yeah, that's a tough exercise. Let us know either in the Locked On Auburn Discord or in the comments down below how you would set the pecking order for linebacker. It's tricky. That's a tricky position group. All right, so now who is going to spell Jarquez Hunter? The competition, the position battle for running back 2 is our 4th most interesting and important position battle that we're looking forward to seeing this fall. Jarquez Hunter is the starter. That's it. And we both believe he will start this season. As far as after that, is kind of what you want. I think it'll be Damari Austin, but Brian Batty, he's done it, right? I mean, he's done it at, not at an SEC level, but he's done it at the college football level and been effective. I just think Damari Austin made some real headway in the opinion of Hugh Freeze throughout spring practice. And I think so much so where after A-Day, he publicly was recruiting Damari Austin to stay on the roster and not enter the transfer portal. I think Damari Austin is going to end up doing enough to be kind of the number 2 back in this offense right now.
I think Hugh Freeze was telling in the A-Day post-game press conference about how he undersold Austin, but also that's before Jeremiah Cobb got to campus. I think once Jeremiah Cobb starts toting the mail a little bit in fall workouts and against UMass, he is going to see what everyone else sees. And in my opinion, at the end of the year, now it may not start out this way. I think Batty is going to be number 2. And it's an important position battle. Yes, and it's an important position battle because most people say, well, if it's not for a starter, what does it matter? Well, running back 2 is very, very important in the SEC when you're talking about lugging carries and having a balanced running attack. It's almost as important as a starting position.
Would you say Jarquez Hunter was a starter last year?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think Batty is 2. I think Cobb starts out the season 3, Austin 4. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think by the time we get to game 9, game 10, Cobb will be running back 2.
So I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. I'm totally cool with that. And I like that Batty offers something different than all the other ones. And I think Cobb does too.
He's a specialization back, though. He can do so many different things out of the backfield and all that. He's unique that way.
I'm with you. Yeah, and he's a gadget guy. Can play special teams, whatever. And then Jeremiah, I mean, we've seen him just be so effective catching the football at the high school level. Obviously has to translate. But with the narrative of like this running back room and talking about how deep it is, and it's like all 4 dudes can't have a big role. It's just you can't do it. You can make the case for 3 guys. You can't make the case for 4 guys. I don't think. Maybe you can. Maybe you want to try. But the default answer is Cobb is the dude who's left behind. And that's just wild to me. It's kind of crazy to think about because he's so stinking good.
I think Hugh Freeze not having the opportunity to recruit Jeremiah Cobb, this was the previous staff that recruited and closed on him. I believe that it is going to be eye-opening for Hugh Freeze and company when Cobb steps on campus and starts running the ball in practice and against UMass and against Cal. I think it's just one of those situations where it's rare that a freshman running back has that kind of impact, but I look just across the state and across the city as far as high schools, and Judkins did that for Ole Miss. Cobb doesn't have to be that dude because of Jarquez Hunter. Judkins was, even though they thought the running back that was the transfer, Zach Evans from TCU, was going to carry more of the load. That's kind of what it looked like going in last year for Ole Miss, and Judkins emerged. That's what I feel like Cobb's going to do. But he doesn't have to be running back 1. You don't have to throw him to the wolves and to the fire. He's very, very comfortable easing him in with 7 to 10 carries a game. But I think by the time we get to, what used to be called Amen Corner, the last 3 games of the year, Cobb will firmly establish himself as running back 2.
All right. There are multiple position battles happening elsewhere on offense as far as the receiving core. We discuss our opinions on that in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. I've had a lot of new members over the last 2 weeks. I think how Twitter has been handled has impacted that some, but we're very close to 2,000 folks. We would love for you to help us get there and enjoy the conversation in Locked On Auburn Discord. The 5th and final position battle that we're going to discuss today, wide receiver, and I think there's 2 parts to this. I think there's an outside battle. I think there's an inside battle. Darrell, let's start with the outside battle. I believe Camden Brown is one outside receiver. I think the battle opposite him is fascinating because you brought in Nick Mardner, who's been through spring, but I think Jair Shorter and I think Shane Hooks are both better than him.
I agree. I think Brown is probably in for a little bit of a battle at that outside position.
But
I think he ultimately wins it. I think the slot position, which we'll talk about in a second, is pretty much, in my opinion, not a battle. I think that there's an incumbent. I think that's locked down. Okay. So I think that leaves, like you said, 3 guys on the other side with Mardner, Shorter, and Hooks. And I just have a feeling that Hooks will emerge there in a tight battle with Shorter. But, of course, he can go to the other side and back up Cam Brown. You can put 4 wides on the field at the same time. There's a lot of things you can do. Right. But, yeah, that other opposite end, outside receiver position is going to be a definite intriguing battle.
Yeah, like I love Nick Mardner in the red zone. I think that makes sense. But as far as like starting a game, I put Shorter slightly ahead of Hooks. I like Shorter stuff, assuming he's healthy and his legs are all checked out. I like the upside of Shorter more than the upside of Hooks. This is not me saying I don't like the upside of Hooks. I like them both a lot. I just need to be very, very clear. But I'm team Jair Shorter in this wide receiver room right now.
I get too caught up sometimes and fall prey to when I've watched guys with my own eyeballs, kind of being biased and prejudiced.
Yeah.
I haven't had an opportunity to see Shorter play live. I've seen Hooks play live twice, and I couldn't take my eyes off of him. I mean, I was following the game.
Did he have you hooked?
He had me hooked. He had me hooked, hook, line, and sinker, brother. But I just watched him, and I kept saying, God, that dude can play at the next level. That guy can play at the next level. And he just made catches, and it was just, again, that's probably some false security there because I saw him live and I didn't see Shorter. When I've seen Shorter in his, on tape,
it's electric.
With limited action because of his injuries last year, he's just a touchdown machine. I mean,
he's catching touchdowns, and I'm catching feelings.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
You're on fire. Yeah, his touchdown to games played ratio is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and receptions, it's stupid.
I mean,
it's insane.
You get him in the red zone with Mardner and Fairweather and Cam Brown, and just start throwing it up to the big boys. It is going to be fun. And
that's right.
That's another, I don't know, little variation of what kind of offense you can run if you're play action. If everyone starts to stack the box and thinks Hunter or Betty is going to carry the ball and you just loft it in the corner, we're going to have some easy pitch and catches. And I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So,
let's just line up and be bigger than you.
You can't go wrong with either one. I know more about Hooks having seen him play, and I thought he was dynamic at that level.
Yeah. At slot, you said that you don't really think it's a competition, and I agree with you. Javarius Johnson will be the starting slot.
I think he's going to have a big year, too. I think he's going to have I just have a really good feeling of having a big year. Yeah.
He could. He certainly could. I think the opportunity will be there for him. He's got to go take advantage of it.
I'll tell you specifically why. Let me tell you why I think that real quick, just from an X's and O's standpoint.
Go ahead.
I think Fairweather up the seam is going to bring a lot of traffic and a lot of bodies with him because of how big and dynamic he is as a tight end that can run, that prototypical Hugh Freeze tight end. And when you run hash mark to hash mark that way, you bring traffic with you. I see Johnson running routes right behind that, little digs, little hooks, where he should have a lot of open grass to catch and run because Fairweather's going to be bringing safeties and stuff with him up the slot through the seam. And I think Hugh Freeze and Phil Montgomery is just sneaky enough to design some plays on the backside of that, and Johnson's going to really benefit from that.
I'm with you. I do think it'll be interesting to see if other slot receivers step up where they feel comfortable. You talk about running 4 wide, or, can they put 2 slot guys on the field at the same time, or what happens if Javarius Johnson, because he's missed some time due to various things. Let's just kind of call a spade. Like, can Coy Moore impress enough to win some of the market share of snaps? Like we were talking about with linebacker. It's like, okay, well, more than one slot receiver is going to play. What's that percentage going to look like? Can Coy Moore kind of solidify more of that? What about Caleb Burton, the Ohio State kid? Like his high school tape is crazy, right? He didn't play at Ohio State, but clearly they're doing something right with receivers there. Like, is he going to bring some of that with him? You know, did he pick up anything watching all these first-round draft picks? Like, probably didn't hurt, Darrell. And so what does it look like with him kind of busting on the scenes this fall camp? I do think Javarius Johnson is a starter at slot, but how those other guys compete and perform, they may get more reps than some people are thinking.
Well, that's the thing. I do believe Moore and Burton will get significant reps. They just won't, we're talking about position battles, or you're assuming starter with that scenario. But I agree. I think Coy Moore will get more targets than he'd had last year. Okay. He may get more targets this year than he did last year and not even start. Same with Burton if he can catch on. Nice problem to have. You start completing passes outside down the field with Brown, Shorter, and Hooks, and then really watch the middle of the field and how that's it's just going to be different for Auburn fans. Buckle up, because you're going to see route running different than you've seen it for a very long time.
That's what we need. That's what we need. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on Twitter, DAP6410. You can see that below. I'm in the Discord. I love chatting it up with the Discord. And then 7:10 on Monday mornings. Good morning, Auburn Opelika.
Yep. You can follow me on socials at Z Blackerby. Read all of our written work at auburndaily.com. And we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.